Welcome to Saints on Cinema. I am Tim Wild.
And I'm Josh Edlow.
And tonight we are doing a review of two witnesses discussing the wonderful theatrical cinematic masterpiece of the Ant-Man and the Wasp. Is it the Ant-Man? It's just Ant-Man. Ant-Man and the Wasp. Or is it just Wasp? Ant-Man and Wasp. That doesn't sound right. Ant-Man and the Wasp. Both of us saw it tonight, and we were going to do a review tomorrow night, but we were like, oh my gosh, we just got to talk about this tonight so we can just get it out of our system and just, well, I did. I wanted to just get it out so I don't have to think about it or worry about it anymore, and bring my thoughts to you and to Josh to hear his reaction, and so we can argue about things that we liked or didn't like. I'm excited about this, so we were just too ambitious and excited to put it off. So, very late at night and early in the morning, separately, we went to see the movie. And first, I'm going to turn to Josh. I just want to hear your general impression, your thoughts. Just what was your initial reaction?
So let me preface this by saying that Ant-Man, in my mind, out of all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, was the biggest surprise to me, is how much I enjoyed the original movie. So I was very excited about Ant-Man and Wasp because I just love the character. I love Paul Rudd. I've loved him ever since I saw him in Clueless and other movies, Anchorman. He's just always, everything he does, I really enjoy. And he was, in my mind, also very good in this movie. He did a good job with what he had.
Before you go on, I just want to agree with that. I think Ant-Man, I don't think I was as surprised that it was as good as I was surprised to Guardians of the Galaxy, that was actually so good. But this was probably one of my favorites of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films. And agreed, Paul Rudd was just fantastic. It's a great script. I like both scripts. I like the first script really well, and I really like what he did in this one. I don't think this one's a total failure or anything, but it's not. Or he was just fantastic. He's the one that carries the movie, both of them. And I very much enjoy his character. And a lot of people I know I talk to think Ant-Man was kind of a boring movie, but it was a heist movie. It was a very different movie compared to the other ones, and very, very entertaining on a lot of different levels. But we're going to get into why I love the first one so much. But anyway, sorry, didn't want to interrupt you. I just want to completely agree with you that the first one was a great success in my mind. I loved it.
Right, and I think really all of the actors in this do a great job. I think Evangeline Lilly does a great job. I liked her as well. I loved her in Lost. Thought she was great in that. Even liked her in Real Steel, which some people didn't necessarily enjoy. But
don't look at me. I didn't even see it.
Right. So, and Michael Douglas, he's always good. So everybody was primed to make this a great movie. I thought this movie, my expectations were probably a little bit higher just because of how much I liked the original. So I'm kind of taking that into account. But I felt like it was really choppy and kind of not. It was. They tried to shove a lot of stuff into this 2 hours. I felt there was a lot of things going on.
I agree. I think the biggest problem with this movie was the plot. And what we're going to do a spoiler-free, just an initial, just a very quick review, just our thoughts about it in general. And then we're going to dive into a few things about specifics about what I really hated about it. But I agree. I think the plot just had too much stuff. And it wasn't just that there was too much stuff that it was like a complicated or convoluted plot. It was just stuff that didn't make sense and stuff that seemed, excessively unnecessary. It was stuff that was just for the sake of having more little twists and technological garbage thrown into it to make it seem like a lot more sophisticated of a story than it really was. I think that was the biggest problem with it. That's kind of the same reaction I had. But let me ask you, Josh, do you think that some of your disappointment was based off of how wonderful Panther was and Infinity Wars?
Yeah, that could be it. I mean, the last couple of movies that Marvel has done has just been so good, and this seems kind of just like this is obviously a side story to what's going on in Infinity War. And to its credit, my biggest question in this movie was why in the world Ant-Man was not involved in Infinity War, the first one, part one. And we got that answer. We know why he wasn't involved now. So And we
just one more contract in that big huge pool for the cast. Actually, something interesting I heard about this one though. The reason I think they were going to introduce Wasp into the Civil War movie, but I guess they were battling back and forth whether or not to squeeze her into that cast or to wait and just give her own film. And I guess that's what happened was they just let her. They just held off on putting her in there to be in this movie, and that would have changed the plot quite a bit if she was in the first one. That's why there was even some conversation about that. There was a lot of reference to Ant-Man being involved with the Civil War events, just like they do with Spider-Man: Homecoming, which was really good. But you think about Civil War, them introduced on the major plot line the Black Panther character, including his origin, and then introduce Spider-Man, including his connection as a superhero and his revelation, or his being revealed as a superhero. And then to throw Wasp in there, that would have been a little too much for that already excessive plot. So I have a lot of issues with that one. But that's what I've heard. That's what I understand happened. So that's kind of cool.
That's also one of the things that I guess was a complaint of mine is, and I mean, they really do. I mean, literally drop you right into the story at the beginning. Like, I'm watching previews, and all of a sudden, I'm like, "Oh, wait, they're starting!" Like the movie.
Yeah, I felt that too. It was like there's no intro, no soft music, no anything, no establishing shots. You're there, and I was like, "Oh, it's like they edited it, and they forgot the beginning part." I felt the exact same way. I thought that was just me.
Yeah, I was sitting there, and I'm like, "Did I miss something? I mean, what's going on?" I'm here the whole time. So that. There was that. It felt like they were literally dropping you right into the story, and there really wasn't much of an origin of the Wasp. I mean, there was some talk of her at the end of the first movie, and then here she's already kind of established as the Wasp now, and so there's that. That kind of bothered me. I also thought that the side story with Bill Foster and the Ghost was, I just like that's what I think put too much into it. So now we've got this story of, and well, before I go into it, Tim, why don't you explain the plot?
Well, do you want to go into that, or just because this is a spoiler-free part? I don't know if we want to talk too much about it. From the trailer, you do know they come across the Ghost. That's the white character that's like morphing everywhere like Matrix, and phasing in and out of stuff, and starts beating them up with what seems like superpowers. We know that she has the suit, and what's his name, Morpheus, or Lawrence Fishburne, is in there, and he's kind of the rival scientist.
Right.
Sure, Foster. I'm great with character names. So anyway, so Kate comes in playing the Wasp.
Oh.
Yeah. And then Paul Rudd puts on the suit. Anyway, that's pretty much it. There's just we understand that there's the continuation of the story that was the cliffhanger at the end of the first movie, where there was this hope that Douglas had for going back and finding his wife, that he never gave up on it, that she in the Phantom Zone, whatever it's called, is there, and there might be hope because Ant-Man came back in the first movie, so he's like, there's a chance, and so he's driven to follow through with that, which he's never given up on that, which is why in the first one they established that's why he neglected Kate for all those years, whatever her name is, and that's where this jumps in, is like right in the middle of that. The problem is there was a big jump from the last movie to now, not just with his being involved with Civil War, but all the relationships have all altered. There's a little bit of distance and hostility between, not hostility, but they're not like just close,
Some hostility at the beginning.
Yeah.
And
there's like a little history that they have to catch you up on because they didn't do a really good segue into the story. And they didn't, and that was a gap that was kind of frustrating. You're sitting here trying to piece together the relationships before they can even get into this very complicated story. But that's essentially it. It was their mission to try and go back and find the wife. And then there's this other scientist, Lawrence Fishburne's character, who is in the middle of that with his own agenda. And there's the Ghost, the white ghost who is there. And that's essentially it, is them kind of hash it all out on this drive to save the mom. That's the entire simple story.
Well,
but
that story is super complicated by the fact that now you've got Bill Foster and the Ghost, who also have some issue, and I'm still not quite clear how the Ghost got to be the Ghost. I mean, like why?
Yeah, we can talk about that. Let's dive into those characters in a little bit. But that's the story. It's pretty simple. It's pretty bland. I mean, for as interesting and deep as these other Marvel movies have been, as they've been progressively getting better, this one was kind of a dip in that increase or that rise. That was the biggest disappointment, was the story. It was really messy. It was jumpy, like you said, Josh, and it was just. It was bland. Even the story itself was pretty bland. The first one had a much better story than this one, and that they should climb. They should get better and progress.
So I would think also that the other thing I liked about like Spider-Man: Homecoming. So Spider-Man's involved in Infinity War, and you get to see his perspective of not Infinity War. I'm sorry, Civil War, and you get to see his perspective from Civil War, and it kind of starts right after Civil War. Like he's, it shows him right after Civil War. He leaves it, then it jumps, and then you see where he is after the fact. Here, there wasn't that moment of, because I feel like, okay, so a lot of this stuff, and then this is probably something that go into the spoilers, but a lot of this stuff that they're going to be talking about, and you're going to see in this movie, is the after the effects of his involvement in Civil War. And so that's kind of where you jump into, now Scott is, he's dealing with the after effects of his being involved in Civil War, and it's affected all of his relationships, and it's affected his entire life, and now he's dealing with it, and it's towards the end of his dealing with it, kind of, or I guess you could say kind of towards the end of that. And then there's this simple story that you're talking about, Tim, that's super complicated by all of these side stories that are going on.
Yeah.
Foster and Sonny Burke.
It's congested. It's a simple story with all these stupid little things clogging it up.
And so you've got this rival scientist and the Ghost. You've got that going on. You've got Sonny Birch, who's like this war. I guess he's an arms dealer, like a black market arms dealer type character, who also wants to get involved. And it just seemed like they were really, and then you also have this business that he's starting with Luis and T.I., and
then the FBI who are kind of hounding him.
Right. And then you've got this other story with his, his ex-wife. And I mean, they're just kind of ancillary characters in this. There's not too much in that. But the point is that all of this is super complicated. I feel like there should have been like an extra half hour to this movie. Because I mean, it was right at 2 hours. I mean, they could have added like 20 minutes to this to kind of parse some of this out and maybe made it a little bit less
smoother. Yeah, smooth it out a little bit. Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I couldn't wait for it to be over by the end. I mean, they'd have to have made the rest of it a lot better to be interesting. But I don't know if I'd want another 20 minutes of this movie.
Well, I don't know. Like I said, I thought that I care about all the characters. I found myself caring a lot about Lawrence Fishburne's character and the Ghost. I found myself caring about the story.
Right.
I just wish it was told a little bit better. Now, I took my whole family. I took all 4 of my kids to it, and I took my wife, who doesn't go to all of them. In fact, I did not realize this, but she told me on the way to the theater, well, there's going to be a problem because I didn't even see the entire Ant-Man movie. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I'm sure we talked about this. And she's like, nope, I didn't. But she enjoyed it. My kids enjoyed it. So there was that. You definitely want to see the after credit scenes. They're integral to the story. In fact, I would say the middle after credit scene is really the ending of the movie. That's really what you're.
Can I tell you that was the best 5 seconds of my experience tonight? Was that section right there?
Without a doubt, that was shocking.
But fantastic. Anyway, we don't want to ruin any of that, but it's just really good.
Yeah, it was
With what you're saying though, people in my theater applauded at the end, and I'm like, what? I was like, no one even applauds at those every time I went and saw Star Wars or recently. Like, people stopped applauding movies, but they applauded for this, and I was like, this wasn't worth it. Didn't deserve that.
So I was kind of surprised at 2 things. One, I was surprised that I showed up to the theater about 45 minutes early, and there was already a line. So I was surprised about that. I was like, there's a line for Ant-Man after Infinity War? That's shocking.
Yeah.
But the thing that was interesting is then we went in, and my theater was not very full. I would say there was, for an opening weekend, it was probably less than half full. So that was surprising. I mean, I went in the evening on Saturday. I figured that would be a good spot for people to want to come and see it. I feel like also we're running into a bit of a problem in my mind of superhero fatigue. I think we're going to start seeing that here, especially I think after Infinity War Part 2, when that comes out. I think that Marvel's dangerously in trouble of kind of going too far with it. If we're getting 3 of these a year from them and a DC and something from Sony, I mean, you think about it, we've had Black Panther, Infinity War, Ant-Man and Wasp, Wonder Woman's coming out this year, Venom's coming out this year. That's 5.
Captain Marvel, you said that.
Is Captain Marvel coming out this year?
I think so.
Okay, so Captain Marvel, so that's 6. I mean, throw an X-Men in there while we're at it. I mean, it's just so.
They already did. Deadpool came out.
Right, yeah, and Deadpool. So that's 7 superhero movies in a year. Now, I enjoy superhero movies, so that's great. But I think we're going to start seeing that now Ant-Man and Wasp kind of gets lost in the shuffle of all of this other stuff going on. And unless they have a really strong storyline for it that's smooth, it almost felt like this was just kind of thrown out there to give us something while we're waiting for Infinity War 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think they just had to wrap up the first portion or the rest of his story with Dr. Pym and everything from the first movie. That's what it felt like. This movie felt like just kind of a placeholder movie, but it's way too late in the game for like a simple movie like this that was irrelevant to everything else. Spider-Man was relevant because it tangled him up with Iron Man, and and you had Happy in there. You had the repercussions of the first attack on Manhattan with the Avengers, and there was a lot of stuff that connected you to the rest of the cinematic universe. This movie had a few references to what happened in Civil War. That's it. So it kind of get lost on its own little strand, I think.
So now I also think a couple other things I would say that I was a little bit critical of, and I would say that I didn't hate this movie. I thought it was entertaining. I enjoyed it. I felt like I said, I just felt it was choppy, and I felt like they tried to put way too much into it and introduce too many characters to it. Because I think the Ghost is an intriguing character, and now that there's a chance that she may become, well, we won't go into that until we get past this review. So they had some intriguing characters to it, but they just added too much to it. I love Michelle Pfeiffer, so I'm excited to see her in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and see where she kind of goes with all this as well. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Are you ready to give it a rating? I'm ready to rate it.
Well, is there anything else you want to comment on? The cinematography, music, the effects? How'd you like the effects?
I thought the effects were fine. I think that was one thing I wanted to say, was I felt like they relied too much on the size differential. Like, how many times did it need to get small and back and big and back and down and back and up and back? I mean, it just
right.
It seemed like it jumped around a lot. In some parts, it made sense to the fight, so that was fine. But I felt like they really, like everything's shrinking and getting bigger, and
it was like a one-trick pony that they just were like, hey, we're done with it. And it was done so much better in the first movie. And I'm not talking about the actual effects, but the way they use the effects. Yeah, and I agree, though. I think the effects looked worse in this one because a lot of the action was in daylight, in the middle of the day, especially the whole long end sequence. I think that contributed to a problem with it. Several of the fight scenes were. My other problem with that is that all of the good stuff that happened in the fight sequences, including a lot of the one-liners, all of it was in the trailer. Everything was spoiled, I think.
Yeah, there was a lot of it in the trailer. I don't think all of it necessarily, but
almost, yeah.
I guess it's a situation of, going back to, like, I've always talked about, I always talked about wrestling, and you always roll your eyes, apparently, anytime I talk about it. But when you're watching wrestling, you see a guy get hit in the head with a chair, and you're like, wow, that looks painful. But then if everybody's getting hit in the head with chairs, it loses the effect because you've seen it a million times.
Right.
So this movie, when you've got things shrinking and things getting bigger and things shrinking and things getting bigger, eventually it's like, okay, so they can get small and then get big. Great.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just felt like there was so much of it. Like, there's a building that shrinks and then gets bigger, and then the cars get shrink and then they get bigger, and then there are times when they're driving small and then they're driving regular size, and then Ant-Man's big and then he's small and then he's regular size, and it's just okay. Figure, come on.
It's dizzying, but not like I'm intrigued kind of a way. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that being said, I also I enjoyed the Paul Rudd-esque comedy. They stayed true to the character in that form. I think there was a lot of funny one-liners. It wasn't like Thor Ragnarok. I think this kept true to the Ant-Man style. So that's good. I love Luis. His character's great. I thought all the ancillary characters in that regard were great as well. So
I agree. Yeah. So final judgment. What?
I would also say that I love the FBI.
The guy?
Yeah, the FBI, Jimmy Woo, I think was his name. Officer
He
Woo.
was hilarious. I really liked that.
He was funny, and he had some good comedic timing. Him and Paul Rudd did really well together too. So it was entertaining. I would say it's really.
I agree with that. It was entertaining. It wasn't like a terrible movie. I laughed out loud quite a bit. Nothing was shocking or surprising, but
there were a few times when I laughed out loud in the theater. So there was that. I think that we're also conditioned to Marvel does so well with these comic book movies. Really, so much better than I would say anything we've ever seen, other than maybe the Tim Burton Batmans. I mean, I can't think of anyone else who's done comic book movies as well as Marvel has done them, and they've done it consistently. And so when you get something when you have an expectation that's way up here and it doesn't hit that, it kind of falls flat. When in any other, like if DC had done this movie, I think we'd be like, wow, they actually didn't screw it up. You know what I mean?
Right. There's a different level of expectation with it. Yeah.
Right.
Well, all right. Well, final judgment. Do you think this movie is celestial, worth seeing in the theater, terrestrial, just get on DVD when it comes out, or telestial, wait till it's on Redbox?
For me, I would say, because I like collecting all of the Marvel movies, I would give it a terrestrial, but it's borderlining telestial.
Really? I agree. I would say get it if you want. If you buy all the Marvel movies, you got to have it for your collection. But I would definitely not say you need to see this in the theater. I think it's not a spectacle. There's no really exciting scenes. Like, I was thinking about this during the last finale in the fight, or in the whole battle sequences at the end. In the first movie, you had a lot of stuff that was visually really cool. When they were shrinking up and down, when he was fighting the Yellow Hornet, whatever it was, and they were in the suitcase, lasers shooting everywhere with the music changing. When he was fighting on the Thomas the Tank Engine train, and they were shrunk and getting big and small all the time, just like in this movie. But it was done in a way that, like, you being in the theater, it was an experience that you were kind of feeling that going up and down. It would get really quiet, and they would show the room while they shrank, and all you could do was see the little effects or the little train crash, and it was really funny, stuff like that. Or when he went into the Quadra Phantom Zone thing in the first one, you felt like you were there with him in this abyss of darkness and quiet and like being lost, and you were shrunk down with it. This movie didn't have a lot of that same impact. It was just watching a bunch of action happen on screen that didn't really suck you in. Not really necessary to see this one in the theater, in my opinion.
Yeah, me neither. I wouldn't. I'd say I would actually tell you to save your money. This is one you could easily just watch at home and be content with on a good TV with a good sound system. I think you would be just as happy.
Yeah, agreed. Hey, wait, we agree on one. That's awesome.
I know, this is the first on Saints on Cinema. Only took like 37 episodes for it to happen.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. That's our spoiler review. It's a fun movie. It's entertaining. It's worth watching. If you want to buy it for your collection, then get it. But save your money. Wait till it comes out on something else, and then watch it later. But yeah. Anyway, that's our spoiler discussion. Anything else, Josh?
Nope. Let's move on into actually our spoiler. Well, this was spoiler free, so now
That was spoiler free. So now we're gonna have a spoiler discussion. I'm gonna have a button right. How about here to go to that discussion? If you already saw it, here, right here.
press it. Just press it if you've seen
Press
the
it.